I've been doing a style page for the Village Voice for the last 5-6 years now. And it's portraits of people that I find on the streets that are dressed in either combinations of unusual things, or they're wearing something I've never seen before, or just something out of the ordinary that catches your eye. And I generally pose people. You know, I engage them, ask them if they mind being photographed. And so through this, this monthly page, I got the idea to do a book on people in their homes. I wanted to, since I had already worked in a very, in an environment that didn't necessarily tell anything about the person, you know, it was pretty, I wanted to get out of that and change the element from the clothes as the expression of the person into the home.
No Place Like Home contains photos of more than 80 homes and the people who live in them. From people living in synagogues to people living in homes covered with squashed beer cans, Arbus found some interesting subjects. And as she says in her introduction, people are always in the process of making homes, but most of them are never finished. They tend to change them the way they do their clothes, as if they were changing their self-image.
Mostly when I come into a place, I talk to people about how to photograph their place. Generally because they know it so well. They're a great source of information. They've seen it photographed before, usually. And I like to make a picture for both of us, you know, so I really engage them in it. We take Polaroids together and we talk about it, and the original concept for the book was one picture per place. So I had to really pick the most representative shot. And generally, the person that lives there is really the one to talk to about it. Let me just take a Polaroid to get an idea of what I need here. Yeah, great. Perfect, thanks. Because this room is so complicated, it has so much in it, I didn't want to get into too much lighting because I knew I was going to have shadows all over the place. The ceilings are incredibly high, so often I bounce lights off the ceiling, but that was going to give me a lot of problems too. So often when I can, or as much as I can, I like to use natural light. When I started doing the book, I realized that I could keep my lens open for a long time and not have any problems with it. If I just used a tripod and a cable release and flipped the mirror up so that there wasn't any camera shake, I could bleed in light from the existing lights from the tungsten lamps in the room and daylight through the windows. And it's a much more natural effect than bringing in a strobe here and a strobe there. That I only really do when I have to. Then I started to realize that people can really sit still a lot longer than one would think. Even people that are older and not necessarily great at sitting still. Even little kids who you would think never can sit still. And because I don't essentially pose people, they can sort of pick their own persona for the photograph, and they generally can hold it surprisingly long.
Although many of the shots in the book were shot entirely with available light, this shot required some auxiliary light. As Arbus framed the shot from above, her assistant set up an electronic strobe.
When I'm going to do a basically natural light photograph of a room, I take a reading out the window, an incident reading out the window. And generally, it's incorrect by at least a stop. I overexpose at least a stop from the reading that I get, knowing that because I'm inside, I'm not really getting a full reading out there. Then you have to make the decision whether you're going to actually be able to read the information out the windows or overblow it, so that it's very overexposed outside. That's generally the way that I work. I like to get a nice, even, lit exposure for the inside and let the windows sort of wash out Generally, I get a reading based on an f-stop that I need to shoot at. So I usually like to stick around f11, f16. Going to f8.5 and 8 will sometimes get me depth of field problems. So once I figure out roughly from there what time exposure I'll need for a good chrome, I'll bracket.
So let me try it at a
There's
half.
two ways to get camera shake. One is by pressing the shutter button with your hand. It's just too easy to move the camera that way. And the other way is by the resonance that the mirror makes when it flips up every time you make an exposure. There is a way to, once you've made your shot, composed your shot, to flip up the mirror manually underneath the
looks great.
advance mechanism, so that the exposure is made without the mirror going whop. So that's a lot more movement right there than you're going to get from your subject in the photograph, and certainly from your furniture.